Okay. Hi. Okay, we're starting again. We're going to, today we're just starting with transits. And, okay, excuse me a second. Okay, each stage we just jump another level with astrology. So we're about to go into the timings of when things happen. So when we're studying with timings, everything happens at certain times for certain amounts of time. When you're doing your natal chart, everything you interpreted was there for your whole life. So each category, each planet, each factor was there for your whole life, was something you have to work on for your whole life. And it's the most important part to know about astrology, to be able to navigate and think in depth with each point on your natal chart. That's the muscles you need, that's the skills you need to be able to tap the character or see how that person is. So the moment we're born, just take a couple of the other charts, I guess. So the moment we're born, we have the planets are at a certain point. The planets are at a certain point in our life, at a certain point in space. They're all in their own specific planets. And we take our first breath and we freeze the universe for an instant. That freeze of the universe, that moment, at that moment, your pure potential, everything you could possibly do in your life is already in you. Everything is, all of your characters, all your colors, all your strengths, all your weaknesses are already set at that moment. It's the blueprint of your life, or the DNA of your being. So that's the blueprint. That's the DNA. But it's what you're working on all the time is, who am I? What am I doing? How am I working at? We're seeing each planet as a function, and it's affected by the sign it's in. It's affected by the house. It affects the house it's in, and it does it easy or difficultly according to the aspects made to it. So we really focused on it. We're learning the planets as we go. We develop the planets. We're coming in relationship with the planets, or the gods, if you like, or the psychological complexes, or the levels of consciousness we run across. Each planet represents a different level or layer of our life. Of course, it's kind of like salad dressing. It's all shook up. We meet a person, it's the whole salad dressing, all shook, the salad with the salad dressing, everything shook up. But as astrologer, we let it settle a bit. We're seeing each layer. We're seeing each layer as it comes along, and we're seeing the oil and the vinegar, we're seeing Mercury and Venus, or we see each planet as its own layer or dimension of consciousness. So the magic is the moment we're born. See, there's only two really assumptions in astrology. One is that the universe has meaning. That's the first assumption. There's meaning in the universe. The second is that we're part of it, and that we're part of that meaning. When we can find meaning within that meaning. This is the two assumptions or beliefs within astrology. Everything else is essentially logical deduction, although there can be intuitive insights, but it's basically a language like music that has certain patterns, set certain scales, certain timings that are set. So when we're born, this is my chart, all the planets are on one side. This is where the planets were at the moment I was born. But at that moment, I'm pure potential. It sets my theme. We've just spent a year and a half going through each planet, 5 levels, going through the planets and the signs, in the houses, in the aspects. So just the ability to see a planet, see the sign it's in and the categories there, that how the sun or the Mercury or the moon picks up the attitude of the sign, how it picks up that attitude and then throws that energy into the affairs of the houses, and then does it easily or difficultly depending on how much stress is involved from the planets, from the aspects. So this was our basic factor. So we had our planets and we have the angles, which are not functions, they're sensitive points. But everything we start with, it's all set. It's in our blueprints, in our fingerprint. It's the DNA of our soul experience. Now, the world doesn't stop because you got on. Some people might have more trouble dealing with that concept than others, but the world didn't stop it. It really never stopped. You got on, and for a moment there was a flash going on, a little picture, a slice being taken of the universe. At that moment of birth, you're the pure potential. You are pure potential. You're the answer to the universe at that moment in time and space. Okay? You're alive. Okay, and this is the moment when you transition from breathing through your mother to breathing on your own. When you come out of the womb, you take your first breath, then you're here as an independent existence. Before that, you're still part of your mother. You're not really here. It's formulating. So we get here, and the moment we get here, the moment we're pure potential, boy, it changes really fast. Like, I don't know if you ever had a kid, but there's a moment you hold your kid for a second. You can see your mom holding you, your grandma holding her. You see your ancestors coming back and holding each other and coming here, and you're holding your kid and you're part of the stream. And then suddenly, boom, it just zips by and it starts moving too fast. You know, but it's part of it. Even though we have our slice and we have a meaning within that slice, everything starts moving. The world didn't stop because you got on. Everything keeps moving. And everything starts moving, well, first the angles start moving because you're born, the earth is moving. And most noticeable thing is the angles start moving. And in the first day, like, there's so many different layers to talk about and to lay out here, but just the idea is everything keeps moving. We're really studying these cycles of how each planet moves at its own speed and how it moves around the chart. And when it moves around the chart, it's going to conjunct each of the planets, or it's going to square, it's going to make its aspects to each of the planets as it goes around the chart. So in the okay, this gets quite confusing because there are an awful lot of things going on at once. It's all going on at once. That's life. But let's see, just imagine if you're sitting in your room. Okay, you got different things around your room. There's a door, there's a window, there's a chair, there's a desk, there's a table. Just imagine each of those things is another person in your room. And here you are. So suppose you're standing in the center of the room and you just turn around 180 to 360 degrees, just do a circle around and then stop again right where you started from. You just did a whole cycle of the room. But if you imagine each thing in the room was a person, the window person, the door person, the chair person, the table person, the lamp person, you know, when you just did one little turnaround, but in that turnaround, you had a relationship to each of the persons or each of the things in that room, a different relationship. So even for that one action, there's a whole bunch of cycles going on, a whole bunch of interactions going on. So if you got 9 people in the room, like you got all the planets, sun, moon, the planets, you got them around the room, and you make one circle, you have a different relationship to each of those planets as you do that one circle. You're having a cycle, but it has a different, you're facing each. You imagine when you face a person, that's the beginning of, like, you're looking at someone, you start that thing, then you move around and you see the next person, then it starts that next one. They're all there, they're relating to you, but they don't get your personal attention until they're looking right at you. So as the planets start to move around the chart, they start to touch each other. From the beginning, they're interacting with each other, and they'll make their aspects, and there's certain points when they'll come to conjunctions to be making aspects where they're coming alive. But and this is the texture of transits we're seeing. So there's many cycles. There's all these different cycles of interrelationships going on, at the same time. And inside of that, there's so many different aspects that can be happening. It gets very confusing. It's easy to get lost just looking at everything and to randomly pick up things. You're just jumping around and looking at factors. You don't get any continuity. It's easy to get lost in this information. So we're going to eventually slow it down. When we're working this class, we're working with your chart. You're going to be doing the calculations on yours. I'm not going to be getting the feedback from the chart. I'll put my chart up and we'll work with the timings, how I've worked with it. But you have to be keeping up with it and doing your own chart while this is going on, so you can learn to develop their perspective. Well, some of the relationships are more important than others. Some of them take time to become noticeable. And there's each planet represents different layers of consciousness, and each relationship starts and comes alive at different times. Hello? Nope, sorry. Nobody ever calls on that phone. I just thought it might have been someone from here. Okay. So this process of any simple motion affects everything in the chart. E equals mc squared. You move one thing, it affects everything. But how do you measure it? How do you focus on it? You can listen to a symphony. There's a symphony going, there's a band playing, but most of us are listening to beat and dance to it. We're not following the notes that each player, each musician is playing, and how each of these things are coming together and how they're relating to each other. We just get the whole thing. And that's basically, we're living our life being the whole thing. We're trying to be ourselves, be our chart, be our nativity. And every day after we're born, we're moving a little bit further away from when we were pure potential. So at the moment we're born, we're pure potential. Every day after that, we're a little further away from the pure potential we were at the moment we take our first breath. By the time we get 7 years old, we've probably moved away from 80, 70% of our potentials. Our lives get structured, go certain ways where certain things make them crystallize. And by the time we're 60 or 70, boy, it's a real effort to be yourself in the face of all the cycles that are going on and how much has happened to you since you were born. Texture of time, of experience. But for each of these experiences, for each of these moments, for each of these little bits that we move away from when we were born, these create orbs of experience. We collect experiences for it. So anybody that's been around 30 years, they lived through 30 years of transits. They lived through 30 years. They deserve some respect for surviving it. No matter how good or bad they are, they're still alive. Same with 50 or 60 or like, wow, it's a miracle we live a day just on germs, just on life. Life is a life and death situation. It's alive, it's dynamic. So we get born in, we're looking at the chart, we're trying to, who am I with that? We're analyzing the chart, but really, you can never define a chart. You can only just tune into it because a person being so alive, there's so much involved. You can tune in, and as you tune in, it's easy to get overwhelmed. As soon as we become open to everything, wow, it's everything. It's like, wow, it's hard enough to keep in touch with one thing at a time, which is what we usually do. We live at one level of consciousness and one planet at a time. We jump from here to there, we jump around. And it seems like a willy-nilly thing. And as we start studying the timings of life, we start seeing these movements start moving into phases, into cycles, into critical points, into phases, into cycles, and they start creating sequences, and they start repeating. And as they do, our consciousness, our awareness of them becomes more and more alive again.